Hello, my name is Mariusz Smolij. I'm conductor and music director of Acadiana Symphony Orchestra in Louisiana, and I'm here to invite you to the final concert of our 2020-21 season. Like the entire season, we titled this particular concert Revive. In nature, the natural period of revival is, of course, spring. At that time, we can both see and hear the signs of life coming back, signs of rebirth, rejuvenation, and really incredible new growth. That season inspired many composers throughout the ages to write works that address that very special time of the year and perhaps also time in our lives. Some of the most outstanding works that talk about spring in musical terms are, of course, Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi, the Pastoral Symphony by Beethoven, some works of Gustav Mahler, and a wonderful cycle of symphonic poems by Czech composer Bedřich Smetana. We're going to begin our concert with music by Antonio Vivaldi, this wonderful Baroque composer, teacher, priest that spent most of his life working in orphanage in Venice and composing music for his students, mostly solo short concertos that the students could perform with their little ensemble. Among those 500 concertos are 6 concertos written for flute, and one of them in a particular way speaks about spring. It is subtitled The Goldfinch and brings to life many wonderful sounds that we associate with this special time of the year. Now, I'd like to invite Andrea Lowry, the principal flute player of Acadiana Symphony, to join me to show you little examples of how this sound of nature, the bird calls, are being incorporated to this Vivaldi concerto and give us those beautiful calls of revival. In the first movement, when composer introduces the flute, he asks the instrument to give us very short little calls of a goldfinch that you can hear during the time of spring. Let's hear some of them. When the birds mate, when they're looking for partners, they are known to have much longer calls, much longer song, and Vivaldi incorporates a little cadenza that sort of gives us that impression of a bird looking, calling for his future mate. This is how it sounds like. Thank you. This concerto has simple structure of 3 movements, and when we come back to the final movements, we hear another set of happy calls as if the bird was announcing to everybody, mission accomplished. I found my mate. Let's hear those final calls. Thank you. It all will sound very different when you have the sounds of the orchestra surrounding those bird calls. in a way, you will get not just the bird, but the entire forest and the entire landscape, the way Vivaldi painted it in musical colors in this concerto. The middle movement is a beautiful lyrical song, very often part of Baroque concertos. You will not hear it in this original setup with the orchestra, but it will give you a little example with me playing the piano, playing the orchestra part. So here is a little bit of the second movement of Vivaldi's Goldfinch Flute Concerto. The second piece in our program that directly is associated with the season of spring, season of revival, is a wonderful composition by Aaron Copland titled Appalachian Spring. Copland occupies a very special place in the history of music in general and in the history of American music in particular. He's a 20th century composer that in his early ages was interested in innovation, in abstract, looking for new musical form. And around year 1930, he writes in his memoirs that he made a conscious decision to find a musical language that conveys his thoughts in the most simple way possible. During that process, he developed a style and language that became the American musical language. The fact that he connected his works with American history, American landscape, the beauty of this country, often referring to folk tradition and nature, touched the soul and heart of American audience and helped create a unique way of expressing musical narration that many Americans can easily associate with. Among his most famous compositions are 4 ballets. They are all connected with American geography and history. Those ballets are Rodeo, when the story, of course, takes place in American Southwest, Billy the Kid, story takes place in Texas, and perhaps the most famous ballet of all that Copland wrote, the Appalachian Spring. This is an effect of his collaboration with wonderful choreographer and dancer Martha Graham. At the top of the score, Copland wrote brief descriptions how he and Martha Graham see that unusual narration. He says that this is a pioneer celebration in spring around newly built farmhouse in Pennsylvania in the early 19th century. Of course, when you have a story that is being told only with music and movement and dance, much is left to the listener and viewer imagination. However, it's very clear that when you look at this ballet, you witness several important elements. You see a small religious community gathering around newly wed couple. There are moments of prayer, there are moments of joyful dancing, and there are moments of reflections. And each of those moments and others are beautifully captured by the composer by actually very simple writing. What he said, he was trying to come to the point with the simplest measures and techniques possible. So now again, with the help of Andrea, I'm going to show you those three important moments in the story of ballet and how composer used flute and other instruments to describe it musically. At the beginning, we have this musical painting of the hills and the scenery, and Copland writes beautiful long melodies as if he was using very thick and slow brush painting something on a panel. Let's listen to an example of those beautiful long melodies. Another important moment in the story is a time when the community gathers around its spiritual leader, called revivalist, and prays together, asking for blessings for a newly wed couple. Let's listen to the melodic description of that prayer. There's also, of course, joyful dancing, happy celebration. And you're going to hear a melody that Copland uses for that dance. And you will notice that the structure of the melody is very similar to the melody he used for the prayer. Again, going back to very efficient use of his musical tools. Thank you. A very important part of the ballet and important theme that takes place towards the end of the entire ballet is melody, song that Copland borrowed from the Shaker's tradition. It's a melody song titled Simple Gifts, which talks about celebrating the simple, important things and moments in life. Very appropriate for this particular story and perhaps a message that resonates far beyond that particular composition. Let's listen to this Shaker's melody. Thank you. This melody became so popular that later Copland made a special arrangement of that melody for full symphony orchestra and wrote several variations based on this theme. The original instrumentation of the ballet includes only 13 instruments, each of them playing a solo part, and in this original version we'll present this wonderful score to you during our May concert. In addition to those two works that directly speak on the subject of spring and revival, you have several other short pieces that have this feeling of joy and hope and spring in its atmosphere, in sort of between the notes. We will present you at the concert one movement from Dvorak's String Quartet number 5 in the orchestral arrangements. And I included Dvorak's music because very often it's being said, and I really believe in that too, that when you listen to Dvorak's music, you can always feel a sunshine. There's always something very warm, very fresh, very inspiring in his writing, regardless whether he writes fast or slow, whether this is work for chamber ensemble or full symphony orchestra. This light, this sunshine seems to be penetrating most of Dvorak's composition, and I think this slow movement from his quartet number 5 is a perfect example of this warm, hopeful, joyous music by this great Czech composer. Another two short works that will round up our program are coming from American culture, American tradition, a form that was born in the United States. We'll play for you few ragtimes. We'll start with probably the most famous ragtimes of all, written by Scott Joplin, titled Entertainer. And then we'll also present two contemporary ragtimes in a string arrangement by wonderful contemporary American composer William Bolcom. So music about spring, about revival, about hope by many different composers, I think all giving us something to celebrate, something to be hopeful for, and I'm really looking forward to playing this music for you and seeing you with us on that concert. Thank you very much.